Sorry for the short delay in getting underway. Welcome to the special multi-locational meeting of the Cabinet, which will be held at Penalta House and via Microsoft Teams on Wednesday, the 12th of March 2025 at 1 p.m. This meeting will be live streamed and a recording made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images and audio of those individuals present and or speaking will be publicly available to all via the recording on the Council website, www.caerphilly.gov.uk. Okay, first thing on the agenda, to receive apologies for absence. Have we received any, Chief Exec?
Dave Street, please.
And Councillor Sean Morgan. Okay, we go on to number 2, declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and or prejudicial interests in respect of any item of business on the agenda in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Are there any declarations of interest at all? No? Okay then, that's fine. Okay, we now move on to receive and consider the following reports. First main agenda item is Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre. Can I ask Councillor Chris Morgan to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. In 2018, the Council adopted a sport and active recreation strategy for the period 2019 to 2029. The vision for sport and active recreation is to encourage healthy lifestyles and support our residents to be more active more often. The strategy identifies reducing budgets, the large number of facilities across the county, and the deteriorating quality of our older buildings, as well as increasing population and consumer demand, are some of the key challenges it is seeking to overcome. Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre is almost 50 years old. The building has a significant maintenance backlog, and the associated 3G football pitch is at the end of its lifespan. The indoor leisure facilities closed as a result of the UK national lockdown in March 2020. These indoor facilities remain closed. The maintenance backlog has increased over the years with inflation from £476,000 in 2029 to £736,000 at current prices. The Leisure Centre formerly operated as a shared site with the adjacent Pontllanfraith Comprehensive School, which closed in 2016. A new centre for vulnerable learners is currently being built on the school site. This new centre will include a sports hall and a 3G pitch available for community use outside of school hours. Given the condition of the existing facilities, when there are new, alternate and modern facilities available on the adjacent site and nearby, and having regard to the Council's sport and active recreation strategy and the mobilising Team Caerphilly principle of doing things differently, it is appropriate to consider their future. Excuse me. The Council undertook a consultation exercise on the proposal that the indoor facilities at Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre remain permanently closed, with the use of the 3G pitch on the Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre site continuing but ceasing once the 3G pitch at the adjacent Centre for Vulnerable Learners is completed and open for community use. The consultation exercise ran from the 20th of November 2023 to 3rd of January 2024 and was widely promoted with a view to gaining an understanding on the impact of the proposal on key stakeholders. Feedback from the consultation exercise was used to further develop the integrated impact assessment undertaken. The full consultation report was attached to the report. On the 20th of March 2024, Cabinet considered a report on the outcome of the public consultation and resolved that Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre would remain closed permanently and the use of the existing 3G pitch would cease once the 3G pitch at the new Centre for Vulnerable Learners is open for community use. A legal challenge was brought against the decision of Cabinet on 6 grounds. The Council conceded that one of the grounds relating to the treatment of a call-in request was more likely to succeed than fail, and agreed that the decision challenged should be quashed on this ground only, while making no concession on the other grounds raised. the Council adopted a pragmatic approach to concede the claim and avoid the delay and cost of a contested hearing. As a result of the decision of Cabinet being quashed, the report was presented to Housing and Environment Scrutiny Committee on the 11th of February 2025 for further comments on the proposal that the Leisure Centre remains closed. Comments are noted in 10.5 of the report. In conclusion, the purpose of this report is to seek, and so I move, that Cabinet approval that Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre remains closed and the existing 3G pitch cease to operate once the new 3G pitch is available at the new Centre for Vulnerable Learners. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Have we got a seconder for that? Councillor Leonard?
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I'm happy to second the report. I also have a question.
Okay, before I bring you in, Councillor Leonard, can I just ask officers one question? Could officers clarify how the public sector equality duty has been addressed in developing this proposal?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So I'll address this question. So you'll be aware that we undertake an integrated impact assessment, and through that we document how we've considered aspects such as the public sector equality duty, but also socio-economic duty, Welsh language considerations, and Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. That integrated impact assessment was developed in advance of this proposal through the consultation exercise that was begun in 2023 and concluded early in 2024. We asked specific questions through the consultation process to invite commentary back from respondents in relation to how this proposal might impact them personally. Through the process of that consultation, we were able to update the integrated impact assessment. As a consequence of bringing this proposal back again for further consideration through scrutiny and Cabinet, we have updated the integrated impact assessment further again. You'll also be aware that as decision makers, you need to give conscious consideration to these aspects. In terms of the public sector equalities duty, through the integrated impact assessment process and through the consultation, we did identify some potential negative impacts, particularly for perhaps for disabled users. So where that might be that that if there was longer travel times or longer travel distances to alternative facilities, then that could potentially have had a negative impact. However, there are a range of alternative facilities within a short travel distance of Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre. Additionally, through the consultation process, we were able to establish that around about 75% of users actually access Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre via private car. Additionally, obviously, there are alternative facilities being built, as Councillor Morgan has outlined, adjacent to the site of Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre. So anybody who accessed the existing facilities on foot would be able to do so, access the new facilities on foot also. And just a sort of a further consideration, you'll see that detail within the report. We reflect on some of the usage figures prior to the facility, the indoor facilities being closed, but also there's some usage figures in relation to the outdoor 3G pitch. And you'll see that there's quite a proportion of users that are junior. So 5.14 of the report, it's about 11,500 adult users through the course of 23-24 using 3G pitch, but just over 20,000 junior users. However, the alternative facilities at the Centre for Vulnerable Users will be available for those users. So whilst the existing 3G pitch is full size, the new provision, a new 3G pitch is a smaller size pitch, but there will be an indoor sports hall that's available for those users and would obviously mitigate any potential impacts further.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Just before we go on to Councillor Leonard, could I ask Councillor Morgan just to repeat in full the recommendations for clarity?
That's okay. So in conclusion, the purpose of this report is to seek, and so I move that the Cabinet approval at Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre remains closed and the existing 3G pitch cease to operate once the new 3G pitch is available at the new centre for vulnerable learners.
What I'll do, I'll repeat the recommendations before you take the vote, so everybody's clear on what the recommendations are. Okay.
Okay, Councillor Philippa Leonard.
Thank you. Since Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre closed in March 2020, can officers explain what additional investment in sports facilities in the area have been delivered and what are being planned? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. So it's pretty significant investment since 2020 in 3G pitches alone. The investment has been just above £3 million, and that's been in new facilities. So new facilities in St Kenneth, which is currently being undertaken, new facility at Risca, which is currently being undertaken, new facility at Abercarn Primary School, which has recently just been completed, and supported alongside that has been significant investment in existing facilities to improve them from a number of perspectives, whether that's new lighting, some more energy efficient lighting, improved changing facilities, improved fencing, improved security around each of those sites. So in so in 3G facilities alone since 2020, it's been in excess of £3 million.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Also mentioned in the report is Blackwood Comprehensive School, Lewis School, Pengham, Ysgol Gyfun Cymrumney. They've also had investment as well. But generally, can officers explain how leisure services manage these sites out of school hours?
Yeah, so there's two aspects of that. So if I take Blackwood Comprehensive School, so that's now directly delivered by ourselves in sport and leisure. So we manage all the bookings, we manage the staff, we manage the engagement with the customers. So we manage the whole process really in partnership, and an excellent partnership with the management team at Blackwood Comprehensive School. With reference to the other two schools you mentioned, so Lewis School Pengham, Ysgol Gyfun Cymrumney, we don't manage those facilities for them at the moment. They're still part of the PFI setup, so they are managed directly by those. But what we do is we support them with their allocation process. So as members will be aware, there's an allocation process for access to 3G pitches, so that we ensure that the right pitches are being allocated to the right teams and the right organisations at the right time. So we support both of those schools with that to ensure that their application and their allocation of those facilities is consistent with what we do right across the county borough.
Councillor Shane Cook.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. I was just wondering, where does Caerphilly rank in Wales in terms of the number of leisure centres we manage?
Thank you, Councillor. Quite simply, we rank as number one. So there's more leisure provision and leisure facilities delivered out of Caerphilly than any other local authority in Wales.
Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Elaine Forrest.
Thank you. Evidence shows us that exercise in all forms plays a vital part to good mental health and physical health. Can an officer explain the investment in other facilities, in the county borough that are not necessarily leisure centres?
Thank you. Rob?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Forehead. So understandably, the focus of this report is on a leisure centre, and the discussion then is around leisure facilities. But I think your question raises an important point. So the sport and active recreation strategy that Councillor Morgan referred to actually sets out the broad provision that exists across the county borough to promote and give access to physical activity. So obviously there's ample green space across the county borough, ranging from formal parks, but also in addition our country parks. So the council undertakes significant investment to maintain and operate our parks and our country parks. Our country parks have free car parking, so there's free access to these facilities. As we speak, there's an extension underway to the visitor centre at Park Cwmdarren, for example. You'll know that Park Penalta Country Park supports a park run, so again, that's free physical activity for people to access every Saturday morning. So there's a whole range of investments across the county borough for people to access opportunities for physical activity outside of built leisure facilities.
Thanks, Rob. Councillor Nigel George.
Right, thank you. Can officers explain how we invested in facilities and 3G pitches in the last 5 years? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor George. So just in relation to 3G pitches, the council has invested over £3 million over the last 5 years. And again, as we speak, there's a new 3G surface going in at Risca Comprehensive and Leisure Centre, replacing the outdated ATP, and we've got a new 3G pitch going into St Kenneth School and Leisure Centre. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Eleni Stenner.
Thank you. Since the indoor leisure centre space closed in 2020, can officers advise members of how this has impacted on direct debit usage figures across the county borough?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. If it's okay, I'll break that down into two elements. So in terms of direct debit figures, we're currently at our highest ever recorded figures. We've just closing in on, so we've got almost 7,000 people across the county borough accessing our facilities through paying via a direct debit membership. In terms of usage figures, again, pleasing to be able to advise. Last year was our highest ever recorded visitor numbers across the service at just on 1.9 million, and we're close to achieving in excess of 2 million this year.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Morgan.
Officers explain what the current maintenance backlog cost of the facility is with such an old building requiring significant investment, and how would the running and maintenance cost of the CVL compare?
Thank you. So in terms of the maintenance costs, that's detailed within the report. So the last condition survey was undertaken in 2019, and details and totals a maintenance backlog coming to £476,000. We asked our property team just to do a piece of work just so that we can understand what that would be in sort of today's money. So just by applying an inflation factor to that over that intervening period, they tell us that at current prices that would amount to £736,000. But the works detailed in the survey, they relate to what I would call sort of basic maintenance. So it's doors, windows, floors, roofs, etc. What you get for that is a building that's been repaired, but it's still a 50-year-old building with 50-year-old standards in terms of thermal efficiency, energy efficiency, 50-year-old standards in terms of accessibility, and so still, as I say, a 50-year-old building, and not something which would necessarily inspire future generations and motivate young people to access our leisure facilities. The Centre for Vulnerable Learners obviously is being built to modern standards. We project that the running costs will be significantly lower than the existing Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre facilities, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that obviously we'll be sharing those facilities, so the leisure facilities are shared with the Centre for Vulnerable Learners. So there are a number of fixed costs which understandably are shared, but also the facility is built to modern standards in terms of its energy efficiency, and as a consequence, we project that the annual running costs for the new leisure offer from the Centre for Vulnerable Learners will be significantly less than the existing revenue budget for Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre.
Okay. Are there any Any further questions at all? No? Okay, if I can summarise then. Look, there's no doubt the facility has been well liked in the past, and for a great number of the community it still is now. And Cabinet will have received the general feedback from within the community. But we have to consider the situation where sporting facilities more generally, and it's important to highlight some of the things that have been said in Cabinet today. So since Pontllanfraith closed its doors in March 2020, we've already heard about the new dual-use pitch at Blackwood Comprehensive School, upgraded 3G at Lewis School, Pengham and Ysgol Gymraeg Cymrumney, further investment planned at Abercarn Primary and St Kenneth Leisure Centre. It's been confirmed in this period Caerphilly County Borough has the most leisure centres in the whole of Wales. That's very important. A strong commitment to improve free access in our country parks and our other facilities. We've seen the highest direct debit numbers across those sporting facilities across Caerphilly, highest ever. And we've heard our investment in a smaller number of better leisure centres is more sustainable than maintaining 50-year-old buildings. It is clear the provision of sport and leisure is extensive in Caerphilly Borough. And I think that leisure service and the offer generally that we provide here would be the envy of many of our nearby authorities. And I genuinely mean that. Can I just repeat the recommendations before we go to the vote, Rob? That Cabinet note the outcome of the legal challenge to the decision of Cabinet made on the 20th of March 2024 in relation to Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre. That Cabinet consider the outcome of the consultations exercise and the comments of the Housing Environment Scrutiny Committee at 10.5 below. The Cabinet approves the permanent closure of the indoor leisure facilities at Pontllanfraith Leisure Centre, and that Cabinet approves the permanent closure of the 3G pitch on the Pontllanfraith site once the 3G pitch at the adjacent centre for vulnerable learners is open for community use. Can we go to the vote now, please, Rob?
Yes, certainly, Deputy Leader. Members, you'll have a voting card in front of you that I would ask you to cast your vote on the 4 recommendations within the report. And Deputy Leader, those 4 recommendations are unanimously approved. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We now move on to special Caerphilly Homes Welsh Housing Quality Standard. Sorry. Caerphilly Homes WHQS 2023 Compliance Policy. I ask Councillor Shane Cook to introduce the report.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. Welsh Government continues to drive up the quality of existing social housing by setting a demanding standard which all social landlords in Wales are legally obliged to meet, known as the Welsh Housing Quality Standard. All social landlords are required to develop and maintain a compliance policy. To allow landlords time to respond to the requirements within the improved standard, this must be in place by the end of March 2025. CCBC is committed to providing a high standard of accommodation and achieving and maintaining the Welsh Housing Quality Standard across our housing stock through a pragmatic and financially prudent approach. We'll use a range of approaches to ensure we have up-to-date information on our properties. This will be used to establish compliance with WHQS and the resources required to maintain this standard. This report was presented to the Housing Environment Scrutiny Committee on the 11th of February 2025 and was universally supported by members. Therefore, I'd like to move the recommendations set out at 3.1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ford.
Thank you. I'd like to formally second, and can I please come in with a question? Yeah. Okay, thank you. With regards to the standards set in WHQS, who determines what is an acceptable level? The report states it will be an independent evaluators, but who identifies as qualified to determine the standards? How will we ensure our operatives and contractors are achieving these standards, and how will this be verified? Thank you.
Okay, Nick.
Thanks, Councillor. So there will be an independent verification process, as is mandated by Welsh Government and is stated in the compliance policy, and the policy kind of grounds that kind of independent verification but that will be conducted by parties not directly involved with the delivery of the WHQS programme. And this could be potentially the council's internal audit, or a team of external consultants, or any other independent audit firm. And a clear policy will be established as part of the evolution of the compliance policy, to avoid any conflicts of interest. And as is stated in the compliance policy will be reviewed annually as the programme evolves, and that's one element that will need to be established as we get into delivery.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Forehead. Councillor Chris Morgan.
Thank you. Are Welsh Government providing any funding towards apprenticeships to train up the tradespeople of the future whilst achieving these new standards? Thank you.
Not directly yet, but I think, as is incumbent on all social landlords, to develop the investment strategy to deliver the ambitions of WHQS. With that will undoubtedly come evidence around skills gaps, and as the technology improves, in terms of the kind of the decarbonisation element, which is a major part of WHQS in part 3. There is undoubtedly going to be some skills gaps. We've got an ageing labour workforce anyway, and we need to bring through more apprentices. But we need to make sure that they are trained in the right skills and the right technologies. There's still a lot of what we would call apprenticeships in the wet trades, which are traditional building techniques. But we need to ensure that those apprenticeship programmes are gearing up. There is a relationship with the colleges at the moment to have green technologies and green elements of their apprenticeship programmes, which we will be working with. And at the moment, we have the highest number of apprentices on our books as we've ever had within the workforce. And it's incumbent on us and all other social landlords to make sure that they are skilled. Will Welsh Government put any money towards that? We'll have to wait and see once we put forward our investment strategies.
Okay, Councillor Carol Andrews.
Thank you. In relation to this policy, how will Caerphilly Homes engage with tenants to incorporate their feedback to enhance satisfaction and community support? Thank you.
So the only reason we're doing this is to improve the quality of the homes of our customers, our tenants. So it's important that they are absolutely front and centre of this. We have a dedicated tenant participation team. We have a dedicated budget that goes with that, we may well keep that under review as we develop the investment strategy as well. And we will be developing an engagement framework with all tenants as we go through as part of the works as they develop into the programme. We've already had a lot of participation with our tenant groups already. I've met our tenant information exchange, which is a group of nominated tenants, and we've gone through particularly the part 3 and decarbonisation and the benefits to all the tenants in terms of thermal efficiency, lower bills, in terms of cost of living crisis and fuel poverty, and have been very engaged and very involved in that. We've also enlisted the support of TPAS, and they've done a number of sessions with our tenants. We've had two sessions, one in November, one in December. Potentially we're going to have sessions that could potentially be with members as well and other staff to kind of understand the customer perspective of delivering the new standard. There's also an element in the policy where we've developed a certificate of compliance as well, which is it's an appendix to the policy in the pack, and that sets out for all tenants identifying exactly, once we've done the assessment, what the quality of the home is, what needs to be improved, and timelines and implications of that, and that's set out as a framework at the back. We will also, as part of the evolution of this policy, and a commitment as part of our tenant satisfaction work, is to make sure that we have the post-completion surveys and make sure we understand kind of the quality, the way that we're acting. We've redrafted a what we expect document, which is what can we expect from tenants and what can we expect from our workforce. terms of that mutual understanding and engagement in terms of what we can expect. But equally, I think we need to do satisfaction surveys more regularly, because it's about the thermal efficiency of that property and how has that technology worked and what is the benefit to the tenant, the customer, in terms of that fuel poverty angle. So there's a number of elements that we've got within tenant participation, but it's got to be a golden thread throughout the programme.
Thank you, Nick. Councillor Stenner, please.
Thank you. What financial impact will this policy have on the HRA?
Thank you. The policy itself obviously is there to assist the delivery and make sure that we have the right processes, the right procedures, the right engagement frameworks, as I just mentioned, in place to ensure the smooth delivery of the WHQS programme. And we've got the right governance framework to make sure that we are as efficient as we possibly can be. That we've got the right process procedure in place to ensure that. So I believe that the impact of this policy is to make sure that we can use that to ensure there's the right assurance framework around the delivery of WHQS into the future, and ensures that the HRA is as efficient as it possibly can be. And that is the overriding impact, to make it as efficient as we can.
Okay, Councillor Philippa Leonard.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. To meet WHQS 23 standards, would it be more viable to knock down properties and rebuild?
Possibly is probably the best, because it is a potential scenario, but it is an extreme one. It's not a mainstream approach to get through this kind of delivery program, which is going to be costly. We'll look at some of the properties that might cost a little bit too much and just say, well, we're going to knock them down. Well, that we're in a housing crisis. We can't afford to have a reduction in our total stock just because we can't meet a Welsh Government target. But there could be some scenarios where some of the properties will not be viable to deliver some of the decarbonisation works. It's just not going to make good financial sense. It comes into another paper that we'll be discussing this afternoon. And we may need to take that decision. This decision's not taken lightly, and indeed we have to get that approved by Welsh Government in terms of reducing our stock numbers and potentially demolishing. There may be a scenario where it frees up the ability to build more, and then obviously our stock numbers may be maintained or even increased. But at the moment, until we've done our stock conditions survey, we've done our targeted energy pathway, and we've developed the investment strategy, we won't know to the extent of that, but I'm hoping that it is the minority.
Okay. I see no further questions. So in that case, Rob, are we okay to go to the vote?
Certainly, Deputy Leader. Members, once again, if you can cast your vote on the two recommendations within the report, please. And those recommendations were unanimously approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, we now move on to agenda item 5. That's the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan 2025 to 26. Can I ask Councillor Shane Cook to introduce the report, please?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. The Housing Revenue Account Business Plan 2025-26 is an annual requirement from Welsh Government as part of the annual submission of the Major Repairs Allowance grant application. The business plan is a long-term 30-year plan which ensures the effective long-term management and maintenance of the Council's housing stock, and is essentially a financial forecast reliant on key assumptions such as inflation rates, interest rates, financing costs, rent increases or decreases, level of bad debt, stock count, pay awards and financing costs. We're still experiencing instability within the market in terms of inflation, material costs, supply and labour resources, which has impacts on the HRA and our new build commitments. The business plan will be available on the Council's website once submitted to Welsh Government. This report was presented to the Housing and Environment Scrutiny Committee on the 11th of February 2025 and was universally supported by members. Therefore, I'd like to move the recommendations set out at 3.1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shane Cook. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Stenner.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I'd like to second the report, and I also have a question. Okay. So with the erratic and unstable nature of the economy, how do we try and bake into the HRA plan the possibility of rising interest rates, materials and fuel costs?
Leslie?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. It's a good question and one we battle with every year, to be honest, when we prepare the plan, especially since COVID. It's very difficult to measure with a high degree of certainty on the level of costs within the plan. And the fact that the business plan is set over 30 years makes it even harder to determine. But Welsh Government do specifically request that the business plan run sensitivity tests to show the impact on the assumptions in the case that they differ to the plan. And you'll note in the report in 5.9.1 that there's a range of tests which include a reduction in rent levels, an increase in material costs, and an increase in arrears. It's further noted in the report on 5.2.4 that we put an additional increase of 1% over the predicted inflation rates that are included in the plan. And this allows for the volatility in building material costs as well. So we've tried to buffer the plan as best as we can. The plan remained viable with that additional 1%. And also over the sensitivity tests that are run through the plan, they're also viable, but would require additional borrowing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Elaine Forehead.
Thank you, Deputy Leader, but I think the officer's just answered my question as well. Thank you.
It's no problem at all. I got one question. So in terms of the new builds through borrowing, what does this mean for the numbers of new builds being built?
Thank you. The new build programme in the plan includes an additional 502 units, and that's a cost of 152 million, over the next 5 years. There is an element of social housing grant included in there that offsets those costs, but the rest is funded mainly from additional borrowing. The borrowing included in the plan is currently viable within the HRA. There is sufficient borrowing capacity within the current business plan for future new build projects, but these will be tested as and when the projects come forward. Until we get them, we obviously can't give that answer in terms of how much borrowing is required.
No, just an observation. Obviously, there's a much need for housing as we know, so it's good that we've got 502 in the pipeline, hopefully more to come. I suppose just a supplementary then, to keep up with demand, what would the number ideally have to be?
Again, it's a difficult answer because the fact we're in a housing crisis is because we can't, no provider at the moment, private sector developer or for affordable housing provider can keep up with demand. Demand outstrips supply, has done for all of my career, unfortunately probably will be when I've hung up my boots. But it's a very difficult one. We've set out in our development and governance strategy an ambition of delivering 1,000 low carbon affordable homes by 2033, and we're on a good at the moment. And we had 140 homes out the ground last calendar year, and one of those will hopefully be completed on schedule by September, and you've just heard about the pipeline of 502. So we're doing as much as we can, but in a way that is responsible and within inside the sustainable HRA business plan.
Thank you, Nick. I can see no further questions from members, so in that case, Rob, can we please go to the vote?
Certainly, Deputy Leader. Members, could you please cast your vote on the single recommendation within the report, please? And that recommendation is unanimously approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. We'll go to our final item on the agenda today. That's agenda item 6, the Caerphilly Homes Welsh Housing Quality Standard Programme Board. Again, to be introduced by Councillor Shane Cook.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. Members, Welsh Housing Quality Standard sets a target for the condition of all social housing in Wales. The standard was originally introduced in 2002 and has been successful in raising the quality of social homes in Wales. The improved HQS standard is a continuation of the original standard with additional areas of focus such as affordable warmth and decarbonisation and biodiversity. These enhancements, particularly Part 3, affordable warmth and decarbonisation, would mean a renewed assessment of all Caerphilly Homes properties. It is therefore proposed the board is created to oversee Caerphilly Homes programme of WHQS delivery and ensure that all decisions respect the needs of Caerphilly homes, contract holders, in parallel with Welsh Government's ambitions for all social housing properties. The purpose of the programme board is therefore to provide strategic direction and overall governance to ensure the successful delivery of WHQS 23. It will maintain compliance, monitor and report progress to ensure continuous improvement. The board will have representation from senior officers and the Cabinet Member for Housing and other necessary officers to serve the board and ensure its functions correctly. Therefore, I would like to move the recommendation set out at 3.1.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Stennett.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. More than happy to second this report, and I have a question. Okay, so will there be a need for additional staffing or changes to the housing maintenance teams to be able to deliver on WHQS 23?
Thanks, Councillor. I think as we review the workload required in delivering the improved standard, this needs to be kept under review. We talked in an earlier question about skills. There's obviously a skills dimension to this, and we're looking to evolve that. We're currently training up some of our team on PAS 2030 and PAS 2035, which are links to commissioning and then delivering some of the decarbonisation works. Equally, also training up some of the staff on solar panel installations, and so there's going to be a skills dynamic. So that may change in terms of some of the kind of the workforce and the staffing. But until we've done, as I said previously, until we've done the stock conditions survey, until we've done the targeted energy pathway, and until we've done the investment plan, we won't know the overall extent of whether we need to kind of evolve or indeed add to the staffing around that within the team, whether that is the internal workforce or whether we need different specialisms to come in to deliver some of that. There have been some changes to the team in terms of how we're structured to deliver the business as usual, of which this will be. But the current thinking is that it may just be more around how we're organised and how we're focused to deliver on this, less any revisions to the scale of the team. But that's going to be kept under review.
Okay, thanks. Just one from me in regards to the board. Who will be the key stakeholders mentioned in the report, or also be part of the board, and how regularly will the board be meeting?
So I think all we meant by the other stakeholders is that there'll be the statutory members of the board, and then we'll invite any other interested stakeholders to the board as and when. So, for example, head of customer and digital services, my manager of housing solutions that links to homelessness, because there'll be a link across the other parts of the service. But they won't necessarily need to sit regularly on the board. And we also have a regular attendee on the board, which is our tenant participation manager, which is important to maintain that golden thread, as I mentioned earlier, around customer and tenant engagement. Initially, we've said that the board might meet every other month, and we need to set that up pretty soon, hopefully following approval today. But that will be kept under review, and I think it likely that it might be more regular as we get into the works programme, as there'll be more debate and decision through the board.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I appreciate things starting off, see how things go, and people coming onto the board as and when required. So I totally understand that. That answers my question. Any further questions at all from Cabinet? No? In that case then, Rob, again, we'll go to the vote.
Certainly. Members, could you please cast your vote on the single recommendation within the report, please? And once again, that recommendation is unanimously approved. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. That concludes the Cabinet for today. Can I thank officers and members for their attendance, and can I formally close the meeting?